On Friday night, January 8th, Saturday morning, January 9th, the decision was made to protect the boss of his program, and we canceled this operation, and that was that. I believe my decision might be different. But her intervention and handling of the Crowford suspected drug delivery gathered near the rear of the state-owned governor's residence in January of 2010, and subsequent related decisions, actions, and events raised serious questions in my mind about her qualifications for confirmation as the Director of Ohio Department of Public Safety. Clear and convincing evidence is not the standard, and while I appreciate that the governor gets to make the initial pick, our constitutional system entrusts the members of the Senate to have to confirm that pick, and it is not a rubber stamp. We have to act in conscience in the way we believe which is best to serve the interests of all Americans. Marked inconsistencies between documentary evidence and witness statements taken under oath, and between testimony of sworn witnesses are troubling. For example, Director Collins Taylor stated several times in her sworn testimony to the Ohio Attorney General on March 24th that former ERC Director Terry Collins, quote, suggested the knock and talk, and that the first time she heard the phrase, quote, knock and talk, associated with the situation was from Terry Collins. Yet, under oath, before the Senate committee just yesterday, Terry Collins testified that he had not even heard of the phrase knock and talk until he attended the committee's hearing yesterday, May 19, 2010. This inconsistency is further substantively raised by Director Collins Taylor's sworn assertion in the OIG investigation that Terry Collins was the one who actually suggested that someone talk with the lady, Mrs. Bruford. Terry Collins testified yesterday under oath before this committee that Director Collins Taylor told him that was what was going to be done, and in fact, that decision was in her jurisdictional purview, not his. These inconsistencies, unlike the timing and decision-maker issues that have been raised between the white paper and the Ohio Inspector General's report, are simply clear on the record, and the council leaves citations after the meeting on the glad to give them. There is ample evidence that some individuals made statements during this matter that conflict with emails and previous statements made during the course of these events, most of which were made either under oath or before this committee. While these inconsistencies raise legitimate integrity concerns, such concerns alone are but one factor to consider in this confirmation process, and in my mind alone are not dispositive. As demonstrated by the evidence, however, the involvement of political decision makers and their concerns over embarrassing the governor or tarnishing the governor-supported inmate work program at the residence exemplifies the problems that arise when politics takes priority over public safety. As concluded by the independent management review conducted by Captain Combest at the direction of Colonel Decker and his assistant, the patrol's operation plan for January 2010 suspected drug route was well planned and provided adequate safety measures for the first family and guests, the public, and the law enforcement officers involved. The fact that the Department of Public Safety subsequently assails the patrol's plan after the fact because of the nature of this way this unraveled is disturbing. In fact, the management review concluded that the alternate knock and talk that resulted from Director Collins Taylor's involvement and the involvement of others outside the chain of command provided more danger to the law enforcement officers than the approved January 8th operational plan. The evidence also establishes that by 5 p.m. on January 8, 2010, the operational plan had been reviewed by or with Lieutenant Manning, who made no objection to Captain Henderson, although he discussed some possible alternatives with Lieutenant Jardy. DPS Chief of Staff McMahon, who sent a 5:34 p.m. email saying, "Sound good," and for whom Superintendent Dickin confirmed to Captain Henderson in the presence of Lieutenant Colonel Costas that Chief of Staff McMahon had said okay to the operation. And by the DRC. Director Collins had been advised of the planned contraband drop and operation by Assistant Director Moore at 4:36 p.m. on that day, January 8th, and Director Collins responded affirmatively, okay, good, at 4:52 p.m. on Friday, January 8th. The operation plan had also been approved by the appropriate Highway Patrol chain of command by 5 p.m. on January 8, 2010. The fact that some of these individuals I have cited had a change of heart on their view of the plan or on their the depth of their knowledge after phone calls were made from individuals outside of patrol's chain of command is evident on the record and, quite frankly, is personally disappointing. It is demonstrated by the evidence that Lieutenant Manning went outside the patrol's applicable chain of command and engaged in numerous conversations with the Governor's Chief of Staff, Mr. Hazley, on the afternoon and evening of January 2010. The Chief of Staff Hazley engaged in telephone calls with Governor Strickland's cell phone 2.8 minutes at 6:40 p.m. on January 8, 2010. The Governor's Chief Legal Counsel, Ken Marcus, ultimately called the Department of Public Safety Director Collins Taylor at 6:40 p.m. and suggested or told her to call the Department of Rehabilitation and Correction Director Terry Collins and Lieutenant Manning. Director Collins Taylor obliged Mr. Marcus and called Mr. Collins and Lieutenant Manning. While there is no evidence of undue influence, nor is there even an inference of undue influence by this individual, the chair, the undisputed fact is that these calls ultimately resulted in the decision to forego the January 8th operation plan and to instead send troopers to advise Mrs. Burford that the Ohio State Patrol was aware of the scheduled January 10th suspected drug drop at the Governor's residence. This was an unheard of misuse of the knock and talk process. This decision simply was not in the best interest of Ohioans. From the governor to the groundskeeper at the state fairgrounds, we are all entitled to be protected by the Highway Patrol, and that the action should have been allowed to go forward as it had in operations before and subsequently after the January 8th and 10th days. As a result of the subsequent State Highway Patrol contacting Mrs. Burford on January 9, 2010, nothing was dropped at the rear boundary of the Governor's residence, and the opportunity to intercept the contraband to be dropped so as to remove this item, if illegal, being drugs, or dangerous, being a bomb, grenade, or gun, was lost. As a result, to the extent that that item is illegal or dangerous, that item apparently remains in the hands of someone, perhaps someone with a criminal record who was involved in suspected or actual criminal activity on January 8th and 9th, 2010. And no one was arrested. As a result of the decision, the Ohio public remains exposed and at risk to the potential adverse impact of that non-intercepted drug or possibly dangerous contraband. This is a situation in which the professionals seem to be on one side and the politicos on the other, and the public suffered for that process. The lack of judgment demonstrated throughout these events points to the assertion that not endorsing the boss or his pet-inmate program trumped public safety, which concern in general has been expressed by several current and former Highway Patrol officers. Responsibility ultimately rests at the top. The buck stopped at the directorship of public safety. This situation raises legitimate concerns about the public's confidence in Director Collins Taylor's priorities, management, and leadership as the director of DPS, and the confidence of Highway Patrol officers and troopers in their ability to do their job of protecting Ohioans under her leadership, free of interference by non-law enforcement or politically appointed personnel in the Department of Public Safety and the Governor's staff. This public and patrol confidence situation simply cannot be resolved by confirming Director Collins Taylor, and in my opinion, will be exasperated by such confirmation.